With plenty of past Blackhawks Stanley Cup champions in attendance, it would be a great night to pick up the first win of the homestand.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into another game day preview edition of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcasting network, where we bring you your team every day. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. On today's episode, I'll open up with everything to note for tonight's original six matchup between the Blackhawks and Bruins, where the Hawks will also be celebrating Chapter 3 of their centennial season, aka the Banner Years. Then I'll discuss why it's time to reunite the Bertuzzi, Bedard, and Burakovsky top line, and a crucial second half ahead for Arvid Soderblom's future. Real quick, though, just a brief reminder to please go and show some support to Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram, as that's the latest account that I'm really trying to boost up here and grow. I post reels of every Blackhawks goal, as well as clips of what their top prospects are doing, and a lot of good stuff in between. So please make sure to go and show some support if you haven't done so already. But happy game day, Blackhawks fans. The four-game homestand continues here tonight with the second and final meeting of the season with the Boston Bruins. The first matchup came all the way back on October 9th, which was just the second game of the season for the Blackhawks, and resulted in a 4-3 overtime loss at TD Garden. However, if you all remember, that was definitely one the Blackhawks should have came out with 2 points in, as they had so many good chances to finish that game in overtime. Connor Bedard, Frankie Nazar, each with prime opportunities. I actually want to say they had a 2-on-0 rush during overtime, but weren't able to get the puck in the back of the net. Fraser Minton winds up being the overtime hero for the Bruins, who, by the way, quick little breakdown here on Boston, to me, have been one of the biggest surprises in the entire NHL so far this year, with 56 points currently through their opening 48 games. They sit in the second wild card spot right now in the Eastern in the Eastern Conference coming into this matchup, and part of that has been thanks to an incredible start here to 2026, as the Bruins are 5-1-0 in their first 6 games of the new year, and also are 7-2-1 in their last 10 overall. So, honestly, I did not expect it to be this type of season out of the Bruins. I didn't expect them to be so competitive and in the playoff picture, as I kind of thought it was going to be a rebuilding season for them. And I know they do still have David Pastrnak. They still got Jeremy Swayman. Obviously, they have Charlie McAvoy, but he missed a significant stretch of play due to an injury. Morgan Geekie has stepped up and been an incredible goal scorer for Boston, who's in the top 10 in the NHL in goals scored so far this year. And just honestly, when I was writing up my preview for Chicago Hockey Now, quick plug, if you enjoy everything I do here on Locked On Blackhawks, you'll definitely like all of my Hawks written content over at chicagohockeynow.com. Make sure to go and check it out. But when even just like writing up the Bruins projected forward lines and defensive pairings for tonight's matchup, even with a healthy Charlie McAvoy now back, just looking at this team on paper, I really don't understand how they've been quite as competitive as they are. But I guess that goes to show you the job that Marco Sturm has done as the head coach of the Bruins here so far this year. So the Blackhawks definitely got to be wary that the Bruins are playing some really good hockey here to open up 2026. As far as the Blackhawks lineup for tonight's matchup at the UC, puck drop, by the way, will be at 7 p.m. Central Time, as opposed to the standard 7:30 p.m. puck drops that we regularly see at the United Center. Game will be televised on CHSN. First and foremost, Teuvo Teravainen was not on the ice for the morning skate here this morning, and he's set to miss a second consecutive game due to an upper body injury that occurred in the latter stages of the first period on Monday against the Edmonton Oilers. Still no real timeline given from head coach Jeff Blashill on Teuvo Teravainen. Not sure if he's going to be able to return for Monday's matchup with Jonathan Toews and the Winnipeg Jets at the United Center. Johnny Toews, by the way, has been playing some incredible hockey here over the past couple of weeks. Just picked up his 900th career NHL point on Thursday night, I believe it was. Maybe it was. No, it was Thursday night when the Blackhawks were also playing the Flames. And he now has goals in 4 consecutive games and points in 8 of his last 10. So shaping up to be a real fun return for Toews to the United Center on Monday when the Hawks face off with the Winnipeg Jets in the Central Division matchup. Not sure if Teuvo Teravainen is going to be able to return for that one. I feel like we'll probably have a good indication by Monday's morning skate, but we do know that Teuvo is not going to be in the lineup here tonight for a second consecutive game. As far as the Blackhawks lineup goes, doesn't look like any changes are going to be made despite a second consecutive loss, and the Blackhawks really struggling to get some offensive support in their past 4 games as they have just 6 goals total. It's going to be Ryan Green, Connor Bedard, and Andre Burakovsky serving as the top line once again. And as a quick reminder, I will be talking more in segment 2 about why I believe it's time to put Tyler Bertuzzi back up on that top line with Bedard and Burakovsky. But looks like Bert is going to be skating with Jason Dickinson and Ilya Mikheyev once again. Dickinson, by the way, had to exit the morning skate early after apparently suffering a little bit of an injury, which he's been banged up throughout the course of the season so far. I think he's had to miss, a game or 2, 3 different times already this season. Looks like he's still expected to play based on what Jeff Blashill told the media after the morning skate, but another seemingly nagging injury for Jason Dickinson, which is really unfortunate for him. But looks like he's still expected to play on that second line with Tyler Bertuzzi and Ilya Mikheyev. Ryan Donato will be on the third line with Oliver Moore and Nick Lardis for a second straight game with Teuvo Teravainen out once again. Didn't really have a very good showing, that trio, for their first look together in Thursday's loss against Calgary, although no real line for the Blackhawks, I thought played all that well in that game. So I like giving them another opportunity. And as I mentioned during Thursday's preview episode, I do feel like Donato's shoot-first mentality could work well with Oliver Moore and Nicky Lardis. And then Colton Dach, Nick Foligno, and Landon Slaggert shaping up to be the fourth line. If for whatever reason Jason Dickinson isn't able to play tonight, Sam Lafferty will then draw into the lineup for the first time since December 28th. On defense, no changes coming either. Alex Vlasic and Louis Crevier, who, by the way, big shout out to Mr. Louis Crevier, my boy Big Lou, who I've thought has really been excellent for the Blackhawks this season. Played in his 100th NHL game on Thursday against the Flames. And I saw a post from Tab Bamford, another credentialed Blackhawks writer on social media, that Crevier is just one of 2 players who were drafted after Wyatt Kaiser in the 2020 NHL draft. Kaiser was the 81st overall pick that year. There have only been 2 players who were drafted after Wyatt Kaiser at number 81 who have appeared in 100 NHL games. Louis Crevier, a 7th round selection in that year's draft, is one of those 2 players. And it's been incredible to see the development that Crevier has had these last few years after being a 7th round selection. I've kind of maybe not given him the benefit of the doubt in the past and never really still felt like he was going to be a puzzle piece. But with the way he's performed this season and stepped up and emerged, solidified a nice top pairing along with Alex Vlasic. Still don't think that's like an ideal top pairing for the Blackhawks long term, but Louis Crevier has been serviceable in that spot and looks more like an NHL defenseman than I ever anticipated him to be. So really good stuff out of Louis Crevier here this year. He'll be on the top pairing with Vlasic once again, Wyatt Kaiser and Artie Levshinov as the second pairing. I feel like as I broke down on yesterday's episode, going through the stats and analytics for every Blackhawks defenseman on the roster, it hasn't really been a good last couple of weeks defensively for Artie Levshinov. Would like to see him. I know this is the biggest knock on his game, and this is the growth that he still has to show, but would love to see him become a more sturdy defensive defenseman here in the second half of his rookie season. And then that leaves Matt Grzelcyk and Connor Murphy. Murphy, by the way, oh man, I'm going to have to pull this up on my phone because I don't want to misspeak, and I'll be able to find it real quick. But I know he's set to pass someone. I think it might even be Marian Hossa. Let me see. Yes, Connor Murphy is set to pass Marian Hossa in all-time career games played as a Blackhawk here tonight. So how about that for Connor Murphy? Obviously, the longest tenured member of the team. Could end up being his final year as a member of the Blackhawks, as it seems pretty likely that he's going to be dealt at the trade deadline. But the small things that Murphy does to contribute to the team, such as stepping in and being physical, fighting like he did against Joel Farabee on Thursday, I think always goes under the radar. So really cool to see that Connor Murphy is going to be passing a Blackhawks legend, not sarcastically, and someone who has their number hanging up in the rafters, and Marian Hossa in all-time games played in Blackhawks history. And then in that, it's actually not going to be Spencer Knight here once again, even though I thought he performed pretty well in Thursday's loss to Calgary as he stopped 20 of 22 shots faced. It's actually going to be Arvid Soderblom's first start since January 4th, his 14th start of the year. He's 5-7-1 with a 3.87 goals against and 873 save percentage in his 13 starts. However, he has fared pretty well against the Boston Bruins in his career, one of the teams he's fared best against with a 1-1-1 record, and along with a 2.66 GAA and 918 save percentage in 3 career games against Boston. And as I mentioned during the intro, I'll be talking more about why it's such a crucial second half to the season for Arvid Soderblom in segment 3 later on during today's episode. Before I move on to segment 2, though, I have to bring up that the Blackhawks, again, are celebrating their banner years here tonight, the 2010s era, where they won 3 Stanley Cups in a 6-year stretch. And it's also Duncan Keith bobblehead night at the United Center. First 8,000 fans in attendance will receive one of those bad boys. And for anyone who's going to tonight's game, the UC doors open up at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. Atrium doors, though, will open at 4:30 p.m. CT. And it's set to be a very fun night at the United Center. I'm very excited to get down there as more than 25 players return to the UC here tonight, including Duncan Keith, who was also in attendance for Thursday's game. Marian Hossa, who was there as well, will be back at the UC again this evening. Brent Seabrook will be there. Corey Crawford will be there. And then Darren Peng is actually set to host a Q&A at 5:45, I believe, in the UC atrium, where he'll be having Dustin Byfuglien, Dave Boland, Andrew Shaw, Marcus Kruger, and Antoine Vermette as panelists. So should be a lot of fun. If you're going to the game tonight, make sure to get there early so you don't miss out on any of the incredible festivities. But with all of these past Blackhawks Stanley Cup champions set to be in attendance, I thought it would be fun to quickly go over some of my favorite moments in their history when they were a member of the Blackhawks. Obviously, starting off with Duncan Keith. I think the one moment that comes to mind the most when thinking of Duncan Keith is his game-winning goal in Game 6 of the 2015 Stanley Cup Final against the Tampa Bay Lightning. There are obviously tons of memorable moments along the way as well. Some that just pop into mind are him losing all the teeth in Game 4 against the San Jose Sharks, only to return later on in the game. Also had the crazy overtime winner against the Nashville Predators in Game 1 of 2015 with the lasso celebration. The 2015 Conn Smythe winner, 2-time Norris Trophy winner, now a Hockey Hall of Famer. Congratulations go out to Duncan Keith once again. Those are some of my personal favorite moments of Keith. For Marian Hossa, the moment that comes to mind for me, and I think a lot of us Blackhawks fans, is the Game 5 overtime winner against the Nashville Predators to put the Blackhawks ahead 3-2 in that series. Takes a 5-minute major penalty late in that game, putting the Blackhawks short-handed, only for Patrick Kane to go and tie it up despite being down a man. Hossa steps out of the box and then just moments later winds up recording the OT winner and hits one of the most legendary sellies in Blackhawks history. For Brent Seabrook, tons of obviously iconic moments for him as well. The one that sticks out the most, though, is the Game 7 overtime winner for the Blackhawks to take down the Red Wings and advance in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Had several clutch overtime winners, though, in his postseason career. Did good old number 7. Corey Crawford. Interesting thinking about best moments for Corey Crawford. One that sticks out to me, not really a moment of his, but a moment that I thought he should have had. I really believe, and I love Patrick Kane, guys. I mean, I'm the biggest Patrick Kane stan there is. But I believe Corey Crawford should have been the 2013 Conn Smythe Trophy winner. He was dynamite all throughout that postseason run. One of my favorite Corey Crawford moments of all time, though, was him going after Robbie Fabry in that first round series in 2016 against the St. Louis Blues, going and chasing them in the corner, throwing some checks. I want to say Fabry was taking it to Jonathan Toews, maybe a little bit in a skirmish there, or one of the Blackhawks skaters. Crawford sticking up for his boys, goes and gets himself involved. And I loved the feistiness and the competitive nature that Corey Crawford always showed, why I thought he always elevated his game when it seemingly meant the most in the postseason. For Dustin Byfuglien, the 2 moments that come to mind immediately thinking about him, 3 moments actually. One is laying out big old Chrissy Pronger in the corner and getting a huge ovation from the fans on tap at the United Center after laying that booming jolt. Then there's also the game-winning goal in overtime, game 3 against the San Jose Sharks to put the Blackhawks ahead 3-0 in the celebration after. And then I also vividly remember the Dustin Byfuglien hat trick in the second round against the Vancouver Canucks in Vancouver, and him like tapping on the glass with his stick, giving it to the Canucks fans who are in attendance. So many great moments, and what a great character number 33 Dustin Byfuglien was. For Troy Brouwer, honestly, Blackhawks fans, I don't really have like an iconic Blackhawks memory of Troy Brouwer, the one that stands out to me, and I wonder if anyone's going to bring it up here tonight. Maybe Darren Pang during the Q&A, but obviously the Game 7 game-winning goal against the Blackhawks in the first round of that 2016 series. Brent Seabrook with the OG double doink off both posts that would have tied the game. That's sadly the moment I remember Troy Brouwer the best from, but of course, a 2010 Stanley Cup champion with the Hawks. Dave Bolin, the moment that'll forever go down in history is his Game 6 game-winning goal against the Bruins, the Blackhawks striking twice in 17 seconds to shock everyone, the Bruins on the bench, the fans that were at the TD Garden that night, even us Blackhawks fans were shocked by what had just transpired in that 17-second stretch. That's the moment I'll always remember Dave Bolin for. For Marcus Kruger, I'll always remember him for selflessly, blocking shots and just being an absolute warrior. And I felt like no player I've ever seen on the Blackhawks took a worse beating than Marcus Kruger, like not only with blocking shots, but I swear this guy would get pummeled into the boards all night long, every single game, and seemingly was always healthy enough to go and suit up. So I give him a ton of credit for that. But of course, there's the Marcus Kruger triple overtime game winner in game 2 against the Anaheim Ducks in the 2015 Stanley Cup final. Iconic goal, the most iconic goal for sure of Marcus Kruger's career. Then we get to Andrew Shaw, 2 goals that stand out, the headbutt goal that would have been the game winner against the Anaheim Ducks. Still have never seen anything like that or even close in my life. And then there's obviously the shin pads goal, 2013 game 1 against the Boston Bruins, the double deflection going into the huddle after the Blackhawks won the game and saying, "I love shin pads," 2 of my favorite moments for Andrew Shaw. And then last but certainly not least, a very key member of the Blackhawks 2015 Stanley Cup team, Antoine Vermette. What a deadline addition he was. Also definitely benefited the Blackhawks that Patrick Kane suffered that broken collarbone and missed the rest of the regular season, so the Hawks could go and take on Vermette's contract for the Stanley Cup playoffs. He was awesome, though, in that Stanley Cup run. The overtime winner in Game 4 against the Ducks to even up that series. Had the Blackhawks dropped that one, they would have fallen behind 3-1 in the Western Conference Final. And I remember the Ducks scored 3 goals in 36 seconds, I believe, in that game to go and take the lead. And then how about the performance from Antoine Vermette as well in the Stanley Cup Final against the Tampa Bay Lightning? I believe it was Game 1 or Game 2, he came away with the overtime winner, and he and Teuvo Teravainen had some really clutch production in that series to help the Blackhawks win the Stanley Cup for a 3rd time in 6 years. Very excited to see all of these Blackhawks greats back at the United Center here tonight, and would definitely be awesome to cap it off with a win and get back on track during this homestand and give all of these Blackhawks greats a fun time tonight in their return to the UC. All right, there is everything to note before puck drops tonight at 7 p.m. Central Time between the Blackhawks and Bruins. Coming up in just a moment, I'll break down why it's time to reunite the Bertuzzi, Bedard, and Burakovsky trio. But first, got to talk to you all about one of today's sponsors here on Locked On Blackhawks, which is Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, go and trust Indeed's sponsored jobs. Are you hiring? Then Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites, because Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. So go and spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed's sponsored jobs. And listeners of the show, you'll get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and make sure to support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Then Indeed is all you need. As always, before getting into segment 2, just a reminder to please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for me. If you're tuning in through an audio platform, please go rate and review the show. It's all 100% free, will not cost you a single penny, and really helps me out in a major way in growing my platform. Segment 2 here on today's episode, though, it's been a struggle for the Blackhawks offense here over their last 4 games. As I mentioned on yesterday's show, they've now scored just 6 goals during their past 4 games. 3 of them came in that win over the Nashville Predators on Saturday night, meaning the Hawks have only scored 3 goals in their other 3 contests, which all have resulted in losses, unsurprisingly. And the Hawks just really haven't gotten the offensive production I think that we were expecting them to get once Connor Bedard returned from that shoulder injury. Obviously, he was ill and wasn't able to play on Monday against the Edmonton Oilers, but still altogether, even taking in that 3-0 win against the Predators, the Hawks only scored 1 goal at even strength in that game. Tyler Bertuzzi's tally came on the power play, and then the third and final goal of the evening was an empty netter from Ryan Green to snap his super long goal drought. But it's been a real big struggle for the Blackhawks at even strength, and I think with the lack of consistency or the lack of contribution that they're getting from their 4 forward lines right now, I feel like it's time to go and load back up the top line of Tyler Bertuzzi, Connor Bedard, and Andre Burakovsky. I feel like Connor Bedard needs to be playing with a goal scorer, and I'm not trying to knock on Ryan Green, but he just can't get the finished product right now. And Andre Burakovsky, my only real knock on him in his first year as a member of the Blackhawks is he hasn't been scoring goals. He hasn't even really been shooting the puck. Yes, his speed has been nice. His playmaking has been nice. And even though I thought he had kind of a poor performance on Thursday, altogether, his defense, I think, is improving in terms of how he utilizes his speed to force turnovers. I think there's still more that he can do in terms of getting his body involved a little bit more often, but he knows how to utilize his speed in different ways, but altogether, he just hasn't been scoring goals for the Blackhawks this year. And Tyler Bertuzzi obviously is the team's leading goal scorer with 24 on the season. And this is another year where I just do not understand why Bedard and Bertuzzi aren't playing with one another more often at even strength. And I could kind of understand Blashill wanting to, spread out, kind of try to create some depth by putting Bertuzzi and Bedard on 2 different lines. But I still feel like their chemistry has been really solid with one another this season. We've definitely seen it on the man advantage. And when you do still allow Bedard to play with Burakovsky on the other wing, you have another guy who can play with speed, who, as I just mentioned, we've seen his playmaking abilities this year. He can carry the puck into the offensive zone, right? So I feel like you can kind of get the best of both worlds by having Bedard with another playmaker who can keep up with him, while obviously Tyler Bertuzzi's speed is his biggest hindrance. He's not known for his playmaking, and he's not the one who's lugging the mail through transition. That's what Bedard and Burakovsky are there for, and it's more so about Bertuzzi being able to go in the dirty areas, win some board battles, hound down the puck to get his guys possession a little bit more often, while he can also score those greasy and scrappy goals from right out in front. And when I went and looked at Natural Stat Trick to see the metrics for the Bedard, Burakovsky, and Bertuzzi line so far this year, first off, they've been pretty solid. They've only played 42 minutes of ice time together with one another here. 43 minutes and 37 seconds exactly this year. And to me, that's just an unacceptable number, because I really do think when Connor Bedard is playing at the level that he's at and has improved every aspect of his game, you want to be capitalizing on that. And I feel like you're just not doing that with Ryan Green on the left wing. And listen, I give Green a ton of credit. I think he's had an outstanding rookie year and has shown more offensively than even someone who's been super high on Green the last couple of years that he's been developing at BU. He's shown better offensive skills as a rookie than even I anticipated him to do, but he's still not getting the finished product. And the Blackhawks as a team are not getting the finished product right now, especially at even strength. So to me, it only makes sense to put your best goal scorer back up with your best playmaker. And they just have not spent enough time with each other at even strength so far this year. But when they have, good things have happened for the Blackhawks. And I go back to that road trip that the Hawks had in early November when Bedard had that massive outing in the first meeting against the Calgary Flames. Then they went and beat up the Detroit Red Wings in their following matchup. I know Bertuzzi, Bedard, and Burakovsky were playing together for that stretch, and they were all producing really nicely. I think it's kind of unfortunate that Frankie Nazar went down with that lower body injury against the Flames, and I feel like ever since then, Bertuzzi hasn't been playing a ton with Bedard at even strength because Nazar really just hasn't been the same type of player ever since that point in time. However, at the morning skate here today, Frankie Nazar was participating in practice / the morning skate for the first time since he suffered that facial injury back on December 20th. Now, he was still wearing the non-contact sweater. He was still wearing the full facial shield, but it seems like he's starting to make some significant progress here. And Blashill even said after the morning skate that while Nazar won't obviously play tonight, he still won't play on Monday against the Jets. He's starting to make some progress, and it feels like he could potentially return for maybe the Blackhawks back-to-back next Thursday and Friday against the Carolina Hurricanes and the Tampa Bay Lightning, or maybe the following game after that on Sunday against the Florida Panthers. He's getting closer to that return, aka he'll probably be back in that second-line center position. And I feel like when you have Frankie Nazar back, hopefully at full health, buzzing around like he was in the opening 10, 15 contests of the year, I feel like that could potentially allow Bertuzzi and Burakovsky to be back up as the top line wingers, because maybe Nazar can he's played with Teuvo a lot at even strength so far this year. He's obviously banged up right now as well, but maybe Ryan Donato on that second line, because I think, or even you could have Ryan Green on that second line. I just think it makes more sense to have Green a little bit further down in the lineup right now, because he can't score goals, while Tyler Bertuzzi is obviously having the best season of his career in the goal-scoring department. And looking at the analytics for the Bertuzzi, Bedard, Burakovsky line on the season, yes, it's a small sample size, only 43 minutes and 37 seconds of ice time at even strength. However, they have a 50% Corsi for ratio, and as I mentioned in my deep dives, the Blackhawks are well below that 50% Mendoza line as a team. They've also outshot their opponent 26-22. They have 26 scoring chances for to 21 against, and have outscored their opponents 4-2. So quite honestly, I'm really not sure why they haven't spent more time together here at even strength. And I'm really hoping that will change here in the upcoming games now that Nazar is getting close to being fully healthy. And I just really think the Blackhawks need a spark at 5-on-5 right now. They've been shut down at even strength for these past 4 games. And I think it's time to put your 3 best offensive players back together on the top line in Bedard, Bertuzzi, and Burakovsky. All right, there are my thoughts on why the Blackhawks should be loading up their top line here once again, given the recent offensive struggles. Coming up in just a moment, before I wrap things up, still have to discuss why the second half is so crucial for Arvid Soderblom's future. But first, a quick word on another one of today's sponsors, which is FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is now making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. An NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. It's Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern time every Friday, and that's become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. And the timing is absolutely perfect, right before the games start and right before the weekend begins. So before tip-off, go and check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Just want to say thank you to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. Segment 3 before I wrap things up. It's been another roller coaster ride of a season so far for Arvid Soderblom as the number 2 netminder. As I mentioned when going through the preview, as he's set to make his 14th start of the season. He's 5-7-1 with a 3.87 goals against average and 873 save percentage. Again, not very solid numbers whatsoever. And I've talked a ton on the show here about how I disagreed mightily with the 2-year contract extension that the Blackhawks handed out to Soderblom as a restricted free agent this past summer. It just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever because A, Soderblom really hasn't proved anything to the organization, still hasn't even through the first half of this season that he is worthy of being an NHL backup, and B, it clogged things up for former second-round pick Drew Commesso to come up to the NHL. He's 23 years old, is now in his 3rd season in a row down with the Rockford Ice Hogs of the AHL. And while he wasn't selected by current general manager Kyle Davidson, I still think it would make more sense to give Comesso opportunities to prove himself as the backup, whereas Soderblom has really had that chance and hasn't proved anything, like I said. Well, we got a very interesting development on this front from NHL insider Frank Seravalli ahead of Monday's game against the Edmonton Oilers. As he said, even though that Soderblom obviously got that 2-year contract extension in the summer, it would kind of indicate that he's got this position on lock. But that doesn't appear to be the case. The Blackhawks apparently are not very sold on him, not surprisingly, based on his shaky performance again so far in the first half of this year. And Seravalli said that while the Hawks aren't ready to just hand that backup job over to Drew Comesso, the second half is going to be very telling for Soderblom's future and whether the Blackhawks are going to have to make a decision on that position. And I really feel like they are going to have to, because how can we expect Arvid Soderblom to all of a sudden be a consistent goaltender? And I've talked on the show about how, yes, his upside, and when he is playing at his best, he looks capable of being a number 2 in this league. The problem is those nights are way too few and far between, and the inconsistency and the floor for Arvid Soderblom. He doesn't have a good baseline. When he doesn't have it, he's going to get beat 4, 5, 6 times. And yes, the numbers are a little bit lopsided this year because he's been hung out to dry on a couple of occasions. But still, at the end of the day, there hasn't been any consistency from him. And he's now 26 years old. He's set to turn 27 in August. And as Frank Seravalli mentioned, he's now at exactly 100 NHL games for his career. And I mean, at this point, it kind of feels like Arvid Soderblom just is what he is. And he has a career save percentage that's well below 900. He's 18, 48, and 10 in his career, which, yes, has come on a bad Blackhawks team, but still doesn't have a single NHL shutout in 100 games, has a career 3.60 goals against average. So to me, that 2-year contract extension has kind of become a hindrance for the Blackhawks because Soderblom hasn't been able to back it up so far this season. While Drew Comesso has continued to wait in the wings, we obviously saw him play in 2 games last weekend for the Blackhawks with Knight and Soderblom ill. And there are still things that Drew Comesso needs to tighten up in his game. But considering the upside or the potential that he could have, and we saw that on Saturday, the 36 save shutout where he was absolutely excellent, and without him, the Blackhawks would be losers in each of their 4 last games. Like we saw the upside for the first time in the NHL out of Drew Comesso. We've seen it down in the AHL these last couple of years, and what's really impressed me the most about him is how he's raised his game in the Calder Cup playoffs. That's really where he's played his best, and I've seen some people say Drew's been inconsistent down in the AHL this year. I do understand that, but still altogether in 19 games, while the Ice Hogs are the second worst team in the Central Division right now, while can't really blame them because so many of their key players are up in the NHL with the Blackhawks, there had to be a lot of call-ups. The depth just really isn't as strong as it's been in years past for Rockford. Comesso still has a .909 save percentage on the season. Even though his record isn't very good, the underlying numbers aren't like putrid whatsoever. It's just kind of a symptom of where the team is at right now. I feel like he's done enough to give himself that opportunity to at least prove that he can be the Blackhawks backup. It's just with Arvid Soderblom having that 2-year contract, there's no room for him right here, right now. However, if Soderblom doesn't pick up his play in the second half of the season, I think the Blackhawks just got to cut ties with him. Whether they have to buy him out, whether they have to trade him for future considerations, if he doesn't figure it out in the second half, it's pretty clear there's no future for Soderblom in Chicago or maybe even in the NHL. And Drew Comesso, well, I don't think he's ever going to be a stud goaltender in the NHL. I do think he has the ability to be the backup. I've been outspoken about that on this show for a long, long time. And I think it's time to give Drew Comesso that opportunity because he's done his part down in the minor leagues with Rockford in his first 3 years. He's set to turn 24 years old this summer, will be an arbitration eligible restricted free agent. But personally, I'd be really shocked if the Blackhawks don't bring him back. So it's going to be interesting to see if Arvid Soderblom can figure it out here in the second half. But if you're asking me personally, it's just kind of hard to expect that to be the case considering what we've seen from him since he's been on the NHL scene these last, 3 to 4 years now. And personally, I wouldn't be too upset if they did wind up moving off of Soderblom. As someone who's been high and preaching for Drew Comesso to get an opportunity for a long time on the show, I think it's time for that to happen. And I'm very interested to see how the Blackhawks are going to handle this backup goaltender situation in the offseason. All right, that is going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. as always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Make sure that you're subscribed to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free as well, wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way, you don't miss out on any of the latest episodes as soon as they become available. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. If you want to follow me on X, you can do so at JackBushman2. My Strictly Blackhawks account is at Talkin' Hockey. Give that a follow as well so you don't miss any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until tomorrow's episode, everyone, go Hawks. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bear down. I'm going to try to have probably an audio-only episode coming out tomorrow, recapping what happens tonight between the Blackhawks and Bruins. Until then, everyone, I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.